The first thing you see isn't the smoke from a cigarette. It's the dried blood on the edge of the cap. No one asks why a man would sew a blade into his hat. Because everyone knows the world is no place for men without weapons. The Peaky Blinders weren't dangerous. They were just more real. Society made monsters out of them because it couldn't bear to see itself reflected in their eyes. That blade in the cap wasn't a symbol of violence. It was a symbol of memory. A reminder that if you want to survive in this world, you have to be sharper than your wounds. And this is where the story begins. Not with a hero, not with a villain, but with men who, between death and survival, simply chose the better-dressed side. They dressed like gentlemen. Three-piece suits, polished shoes, and hats whose brims cast shadows over their eyes. Outwardly, calm and dignified. But beneath those fabrics burned a fury society refused to see. In the smoke-stained alleys of Birmingham, a clean appearance meant survival. When you were poor, the only thing you could control was how you looked. So men with nothing to lose began to look like men who had everything. Clothing became a substitute for power, and the hat a substitute for danger. The Peaky Blinders caps were not just for shade. Sewn into their brims was a razor blade, thin, sharp, and almost invisible. A small motion was enough to earn respect or draw blood. The blades were the signature of a generation wounded by war. Soldiers who had returned from the front, but to a peace that no longer existed. They set aside their uniforms and forged a new one. Coat, vest, and razor-brimmed cap. The more society ignored them, the more dangerous their appearance became. Clothing turned into a language of defiance. They couldn't speak like the aristocrats, but they could dress like them. And more than that, they could use their clothes as a weapon. Every stitch was a tooth, every blade a reminder of an unhealed wound. But time devours rebellion. Decades later, those same clothes returned, not to the streets of Birmingham, but to boutique windows. The razor cap had become just a stylish accessory. The blade was gone, but its symbol remained. Fashion buys what it fears and makes it safe. The Peaky Blinders were once the symbol of armed poverty. Today, they are the symbol of decorative poverty. Every stitch once born from anger is now repeated in television commercials. Every blade meant as a threat has become part of a brand. We kept the style, but forgot the reason. In today's world, looking rebellious is easier than being rebellious. We wear the clothes of protest, but have nothing to say. In the end, the Peaky Blinders were more than just a gang. They were the sign of a society where the working class had to sew blades into their caps just to be seen. And perhaps it is this contradiction that made them eternal. Beauty and violence in the same frame. Politeness and menace in the same glance. A mask of grace, a cover for the wound. Their appearance lied, but the truth behind it screamed. The Peaky Blinders knew well, sometimes to survive, you must dress like your enemy. And sometimes, the only thing between respect and blood is a single, thin blade. Before Tommy Shelby became a leader, he was a soldier. The First World War made him and broke him in the same instant. When he returned from the trenches, No one told him the war was over. Only the geography had changed. From the soil of France to the streets of Birmingham. The same mud, the same sounds, the same death, just without a map. Tommy Shelby appeared to be in control. His voice was calm, his gaze cold, and his decisions merciless. But inside him, another order ruled. The sound of gunfire still echoed. Only now, from within, every decision was an attempt to silence that noise. Power was not his cure. It was his sedative. He built an empire for himself, but with the materials of ruin. With everything he gained, he lost a piece of himself. In a world full of broken men, he simply learned to break in a more organized way. That's what made him dangerous. A man who does not fear death, because he's been dead inside for years. People saw Tommy Shelby as a hero because he hid himself well. They mistook his silence for strength, his ruthlessness for confidence. But behind every calculated move was a panic he could no longer control. He didn't fight to win. He fought to feel alive. In a society that taught men emotion was weakness, Tommy learned to bury his feelings. And from that grave, he built his empire. He commanded others because he couldn't command himself. He no longer fought for his family. He fought for oblivion. But pain always finds a way back. In his dreams, in the faces of his enemies, in the silence of his rooms. Every ounce of power he gained was only a shadow cast over his wound. He was a man who brought the war home and never managed to put it down. Maybe that's why we love Tommy Shelby, because we see a part of ourselves in him. The quiet, wounded, seemingly strong part. We too have learned to build a hard face while burning inside. He isn't a hero. He's a reflection of us when we pretend we're fine. In the end, the legend of Tommy Shelby isn't about power. It's about survival. It's about a man who can't surrender because if he stops, he'll fall apart. Our hero is, in truth, the most unhealed among us. And maybe that's why we can't forget him. Because in a world full of roles and masks, he is the most honest lie. The Peaky Blinders did not emerge from nothing. They were born from a city tired of itself. 20th century Birmingham was filled with smoke, poverty, and the casualties of industrialization. On its streets walked workers who had once fought for their country. But now, the country had forgotten their names. The government forgot its heroes. The factories forgot their workers. And the church forgot its faith. In a place where the law no longer served the lower class, a new law was born. The law of the streets. The Peaky Blinders were not a rebellion against injustice. They were an answer to it. When the world is against you, crime becomes a language for survival. In those years, crime was not a choice. It was an economic mechanism. Stealing was like working in a mine, dangerous, grueling, but the only way to live. The gangs became their own governments. They collected taxes, offered protection, and enforced order, just like the system that had collapsed beside them. Power took shape in the streets because it had vanished from above. Tommy Shelby and his men merely filled the void. Every system that crushes people eventually breeds a violent version of itself below. The Peaky Blinders were not Britain's enemies. They were its reflection. But history always romanticizes its outlaws. The men who once rose from poverty now decorate art posters. Their blades have rusted, but their image sells. What was once a warning has become an inspiration. We use their story not to understand the ugliness of poverty, but to decorate it, to make it bearable. The Peaky Blinders were not just a gang of criminals. They were a reminder that when society takes justice away from its people, violence takes its place. In a world where the poor are unheard, the sound of gunfire becomes the only possible translation. Birmingham from a century ago is gone, but its wound remains. Today's gangs wear different clothes, speak through phones, and work in glass offices. But the logic is the same. Wherever opportunity is unequal, underground power will grow. In the end, the Peaky Blinders are neither a story of crime nor of heroism. They are the story of a system that forgot humanity, and of humans who had to rebuild themselves, even if with a blade. They were the product of a society that failed, but pretended it had won. And perhaps that's why they still live within us. Because in truth, we are still that same society. Only the clothes have changed.